Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Adam Caplan, Geoff Mosher here. We are continuing our NFC East preview with the man, the myth, and the living legend, Greg Cosell. He is back with us. We've done Dallas. We've done Washington, you know, the two favorite teams of Eagles fans. And now we're going to do the third favorite team. We're going to talk about the New York Football Giants. A very interesting offseason for them. I think we can all agree that the Giants have one of those off seasons, guys, that you would want, like if you were a Giants fan, them to have. You knew that they were had shown some improvement, but they needed help in some areas. I'm not a huge fan of free agent spending, but if you're going to go out and get some free agents, you try to target the younger guys on second contracts. You know, they bring in a Galladay, they bring in Dory Jackson. They did show improvement last year. A lot of it will come down to how good the quarterback play is. And how much this offense can kind of match up to what they were able to do defensively last year. And then also now, Greg, the Giants aren't going to surprise anybody. Not that they're great, but they certainly showed enough improvement last year so that teams kind of have to – you got to show up to beat the Giants now. I think they're an interesting team here, a kind of a wild card team in the division.
I would agree. I think they've tried to shore up some areas on offense. Defensively, a year ago, they improved as the season progressed. They played a lot of zone coverage a year ago. I think you'll probably see them play more man concepts this year based on what I think Patrick Graham, their defensive coordinator, what his approach would ultimately like to be. But defensively, they're one of those teams that's very fundamentally sound. They play with excellent discipline. And I think that really showed up. They got a great year from Leonard Williams, who they're a multiple front defense because Patrick Graham has the background with Bill Belichick, and that's that multiple front look where players can play all along the defensive front. And Williams did that a year ago and played extremely well. They looked to get a pass rusher in the draft because they did not have a pure pass rusher. So in the second round, they drafted Azeez Ojulari, who probably would have been a first-round pick other than some injuries I know that some were concerned about, and obviously that's something that needs to be monitored. But this is a very intriguing team, particularly defensively, and then, of course, offensively we'll get to it shortly here. But they've added a lot to try to help Daniel Jones going into his third season.
Adam, Greg, would you agree? I wanted to ask you, Adam, from a big picture standpoint, would you agree that the Giants approach the offseason thinking we can compete, we can win this division, we can do some things if we fit, almost like 2017 Eagles where they targeted an Alshon Jeffrey, they brought in some good veterans on 1-year deals. You know, they tried to add to what their nucleus already was. And of course they get Saquon Barkley. We'll talk about him coming back.
Yeah, as critical as I've been with Dave Gettleman, I thought he did a great job of addressing needs at the wide receiver position, getting Truex and Kenny Galladay. And we'll get Greg's opinion of what his tape looked like. Darius Slayton, I've always liked, but he's just not a number one NFL receiver. It brings in Rudolph, who's a supreme blocking tight end. That's a good move there. That'll free up Engram a little bit to be moved around more. I like the approach that with Ojulari. Greg's right. That was one issue for them with Jimenez and with his injuries. Is finding someone who can get to the passer. They're at least they have depth at cornerback. So we'll talk to Greg more about the defense in a couple minutes, but he did address that. The one issue that they didn't really address hard enough is the offensive line. I know Zach Fulton started a bunch of games for the Texans, and he was previously with the Chiefs before that. But that is the one issue that, to me, if Daniel Jones is going to play better, and I really want to get an idea of what Greg saw from his coaching tape last season, they've got to be able to protect him. And I do wonder how much he was able to step up and throw, or did he move without, did he move when he wasn't supposed to move? We'll get into that. But overall, Geoff, to just discuss what you're talking about, they addressed a lot of things. And this is a good football team on paper, but coaching also matters. So we'll see how that plays into it.
Absolutely. So we'll get into some of those names that we just brought up. First, Greg, I had asked you last week when we started this series about some of your athletic accomplishments when you were younger. And it dawned on me, I never asked you, did you ever win a championship at any level?
I did not win a championship at any level. I mean, not a true championship. I believe my junior year in high school, we came in first place in our division in baseball, and then we made the playoffs. And I remember going up against a pitcher that ended up getting drafted, and he threw some serious juice. And I just remember that it was a little faster than what we had faced throughout the season. And I thought I took some really good swings. And I remember it was either my first or second at bat, and I was the third place hitter. I took what I thought was a really good swing, and I popped up to second base. And I just thought that ball's getting up there pretty fast. Now, the kid didn't make it in the major league.
I was just about to ask you, did that kid turn out to be John Franco or something? Because I know you're from Queens, so I'm trying to think of.
But for those who are older and who will remember this, my junior year in high school, I was the All-City shortstop, and the New York City Player of the Year in baseball my junior year was Lee Mazzilli.
Wow. Oh, the lefty.
Sure. Go. Former Oriole, former Met. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Played, I believe, at Lincoln High School.
Wow.
How about that? All right. Okay, so no championship, but at least you gave it your best effort against a guy who was drafted. That's good. Good to know. One of these days, I'm going to get some kind of crowning athletic achievement of you. Like aside from I played against Ernie Grenfell, I know that there's something in you. You probably had a game where you scored, you dunked on somebody, or you hit 3 home runs in a game. No.
No, I mean,
they didn't have 3-pointers back then when Greg was playing.
No, they did not. They did not.
I'm not criticizing. I'm not making fun.
Hey, you weren't trying to rip Greg. But it sounded like it.
For whatever it's worth, I did get my name in the paper a lot.
There you go.
There you go. The Long Island Press or the bigger ones like the Daily News and the Post?
More of the Long Island Press, because that was the afternoon paper. That was kind of the local paper. So yeah. So yeah, once in a while.
I know those are moments, just like ours and Adam's, that you'll never forget. And you may have retired off the field a long, long time ago, like Adam and I have. But hey, we're all still winning because we use Deal Dash, the online shopping platform that's actually fun. Deal Dash is the longest running penny auction website and app around. Does that sound too good to be true? I know it does, because we've seen a car sell for $900. We've seen a brand new TV go for less than $2. So don't be a loser. Stop paying full retail price for the things that you want. Just get on Deal Dash. Go to DealDash.com or download the app. And when you register, enter the promo code ITB for a special offer for some bonus free bids. That's promo code ITB for a special offer for some bonus free bids on DealDash.com, or you just download the app and start bidding. Maybe we can bid. Maybe we can find an old Greg Cosell high school jersey or something like that that's going up for sale.
He'll autograph it.
Yeah, he'll autograph it, and you can bid on that. You would do that, Greg. You're a man of the people.
Sure. Although I don't know if I have any. That was a long time ago, Geoff.
It was quite a while ago, as Adam mentioned, even before the 3-point line. So, but that's all right. That's all right. Well, let's get into the Giants. Let's talk about their offense first, because I think I have more questions about what they are and what they're going to be offensively now that they've added a little bit. But I think we should start with Daniel Jones, Greg, because I know you've spent a lot of time in particular studying tape and down and distance with him, and we'd love to kind of, pick your brain on what you saw through the tape study.
Well, I mostly looked at third down because I just couldn't look at every single throw. So I predominantly looked at third down. And to be honest, guys, it was better than I thought it would be. I thought that the O-line posed some problems. And when your O-line poses problems in pass protection on third down, it really limits what you can do in the pass game, because what the Giants did, and a number of teams do this because you have to, is you end up having to keep a tight end and a back end to pass protect. And very often it's not just a chip where they then release, they become part of the protection. And then you're sending 3 receivers out, and it's very difficult to attack coverage with 3 receivers. Now, Jones was often under duress. And again, when I say under duress, it's not as if they were free rushers, but he was often surrounded by bodies, and he was not particularly comfortable. Now, he was an unsettled player. There were too many snaps in which he did not set and plant his back foot. He probably started to anticipate that he would get pressure. And when you anticipate that you're going to get pressure, you start to play very fast physically, and you just don't set. I think he's going to have to be better in those situations. That's the next step for him, because even though he has some movement ability, he's essentially a pocket quarterback. So the next step for him is he's going to have to learn how to set and deliver when there are bodies around him.
One of the things, Greg, I learned from you and Ron Jaworski over the years from sitting in there with NFL Films is you would look for, when there were young quarterbacks, and here you now have a third-year quarterback, Daniel Jones. Do they move when they should move? Do they perceive pressure? Because you just talked about their offensive line, Greg. Were there times when you go, why is he moving? Like, how did he handle bodies around him?
I would say not particularly well, and that's my point. He was unsettled. Yeah. He's going to need – look, if you're essentially a pocket quarterback in the NFL, at some point in time, you're going to have to deal with people around you. It's the NFL, and it's how you deal with those situations, which tend to be the critical situations, longer yardage situations, third down. And ultimately, you've got to be able to handle that. You've got to be able to stand in there and deliver without breaking down your mechanics and fundamentals. And I think Jones needs to improve in that area. Now, it's always easy to say when you watch a game, let's say on TV, oh, there's people around him. But this is the NFL. Different people, and I learned from a lot of people. You mentioned Jaws, Adam. I've learned from a lot of coaches, too, over the years. You know, pressure in the NFL is a relative thing. A lot of people now have stats where they say throws under pressure. Well, I don't know what that means. I know what pressure means to me from the people that have taught me. And if you can step into a throw, that's not pressure in the NFL, even if a guy's right near you. So it's a relative term. People define it differently. But Jones must get better in that area. And earlier, I don't know whether you said it, Adam, or Geoff, you said it, but you could make the argument that the Giants have addressed their offensive line. They just need the players that they have to become good players. Last year in 2020, they drafted an O-lineman with the first pick and with the third pick. Will Hernandez, their guard, was a second-round pick in 2018. Zach Fulton is a solid NFL guard who they got in free agency. So they have addressed their offensive line. It just needs to play better.
Sounds like what we talk about with Eagles wide receivers. They've addressed that position with lots of draft picks, and you're looking for the improvement and the talent development to come. One last thing on Daniel Jones, because you did say when protected or when he's got time to throw, you liked what you saw on third down. Does he look to drive the ball, or is he more of a pick you apart across the middle? Does he have kind of an identity or a style that you can kind of articulate there with how he likes to play the position?
I mean, I think ultimately he's a guy that, if all works out well, runs your system effectively. What I thought he did well, and which I liked, I thought he was very decisive with his reads and throws versus man-to-man coverage. And you always like to see that, because in this league, when you get man, you have to count on your receivers to give you a place to throw the football. Now, you have to be precise with your ball location, but if your receivers can't give you any kind of separation at all, then you need new receivers. That's not the quarterback's issue. So he was very decisive with his reads and his throws versus man, whether it was cover one, two man, a coverage called one robber, which a lot of people play now, where they take one safety. One safety stays deep as the post safety. The other safety drops down kind of anywhere in the 10 to 12-yard area right in the middle of the field. He's what we call the robber. A lot of teams play that. Jones was really decisive. I think Jones still has a chance to be a good player, and they clearly feel the same way, which is why they did what they did in free agency and the draft.
Speaking of, let's talk about Kenny Golladay, because now if you're a Giant fan, and we know that a lot of Giant fans will watch this, what could they expect from Kenny Golladay?
Kenny Golladay is almost your classic boundary X, meaning the single receiver to the short side of the field. He's big, he's physical, he's a good athlete, he can make contested catches, he can run a bit with that stride length because he's close to 6'4". So while he's not a 4.35 guy, stride length is a trait. So he can run away from man coverage on crossers because he's just bigger. So he is your classic boundary X, and he can win contested catches. Your X receiver gets a lot of man-to-man coverage on the backside of trips, and he has to be able to win versus man. And you win versus man multiple ways. You can win with your size, with your ability to make contested catches. That's the way a lot of guys do win. You can win just by running great routes. But he's a big, physical, competitive receiver who can make contested catches. He's your classic boundary X receiver.
So it seems like I know in the past, Greg, when you looked at the Giants receivers, You can make anything work, but I remember when they signed Golden Tate and they already had Sterling Shepard there, and you wondered how they were going to make this inside-outside work stylistically. It seems like maybe they're more fit to have what you expect. A guy like Galladay at the X or boundary X, you can have Darius Slayton as your Z, and you can have a guy like Sterling Shepard inside. And obviously they drafted Kadarius Toney. They signed, I guess they're taking a flyer on John Ross to see if they can get some extra speed to that group. But I feel like their wide receiver pieces make sense a little bit more now than maybe in the past year or two.
Well, what they've done here is they tried to give this offense every dimension in the pass game. The speed dimension with Slay and ideally Ross, who was a top 10 pick. You have the guys who can work underneath. You have the Sterling Shepard. You have a Kadarius Toney, who's tremendous stop and start ability, almost runs routes like your classic slot. All those routes that require stop and start, pivot routes, whip routes, juke routes. Toney can do all that in addition to the fact that he can run. And Toney, you can line up all over your formation. I'm fascinated to see how they mix and match Shepard and Toney. So we'll see how that plays out. They might not know that yet. They have to figure that out. You know, Evan Ingram's also been kind of an enigma wrapped in a riddle here. He's a 4.42 guy at the combine, and he hasn't really played like that with few exceptions. He's been hurt a lot. He's never really developed into the kind of dynamic tight end that I'm sure the Giants thought when they drafted him in 2017, you know, to be that kind of new breed tight end who you could line up all over, split from the formation, and he could produce he could be an intermediate and vertical dimension. He's shown that on occasion. I remember he caught a 75-yard touchdown against the Bucks. I can't remember whether it was this year or it was probably the year before. I think it was the year before, Jones' first year, and you saw the talent and the ability to run away from defenders. But he hasn't really shown that consistently. And if they could get him to play at that kind of level, then they've really got a pretty good level of skill position players.
Greg, offensive line-wise, we're probably going to see I told us to pronounce Parrott at right tackle, kid from UConn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got Will Hernandez, you mentioned earlier. Andrew Thomas, theoretically, should be their left tackle. We'll see what they do with Solder. When you look at this offensive line, could this be at least an average offensive line talent? And you've watched these guys play. What does this group look like to you?
Well, like I said, they've addressed it. They expect Thomas to be a quality left tackle. When they draft Pert in the third round, they expect him to be their right tackle. Pert was a 4-year starter in college, 2 years at right tackle, 2 years at left tackle. Hernandez, I haven't studied him individually, but I remember watching him coming out, and he was big, physical, competitive, reasonably athletic. You know, I think they expect him to be a really good player. You know, Fulton is a solid player. You can line him up and start at guard. So this O-line should be better. I thought Thomas, and again, I watched the third downs, I thought Thomas clearly improved at left tackle as the year progressed in terms of one-on-one pass protection. And they're expecting him. Look, wasn't he the first O-tackle drafted? Didn't the Giants take him first?
Yes, I believe he was the first one off the board.
Yeah, so, I mean, look.
Oh, it was Becton. No, Becton might have been the –
No, Becton was later, I thought.
Yeah, he was the 4th pick overall last year.
Oh, God, that's right. He was. Yeah,
he
was the first
I thought.
Yeah.
So, look, you know, we can sit and debate what that means. You know, should he be an all-pro Hall of Famer? You know, no one can answer that. But they certainly expect the left tackle position to be manned by Thomas and for him to be able to pass protect one-on-one against even the best pass rushers that you're going to face week in and week out. And you need your left tackle to be able to do that when you draft him 4th in the draft.
All right, 2 more guys, Greg, I want to ask you about offensively. First, I want to remind our listeners to download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use that promo code ITB. And when you sign up, you can turn $1 into $100 in free credits. Just $1. You bet $1, and you can turn it into $100 in free credits using that promo code ITB when you download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. So they kind of go together with my question here. Obviously, Saquon Barkley comes back. When he was healthy last year, which was not for very much, there were still some questions about his impact in the offense, the way Jason Garrett was running it. And, of course, Jason Garrett, Greg, in Dallas, gained a reputation for being a little conservative, playing more 2 tight end. He's got weapons now. He's got Saquon back, the receivers we just talked about. Is Jason Garrett the type of guy to maybe open this up in your mind and to be a little bit more creative and try to get Saquon more involved in the passing game? Or is he just going to run it with Saquon the best he can, and then third down, you start to throw. How do you see Jason Garrett using all these weapons, knowing his past tendencies?
Well, I mean, I think when he was in Dallas, they had Zeke for those years with a lot of carries. You know, I think what they probably like to do, and of course I don't know this for a fact, but I think what they like to do is have an offense that can be very multiple in terms of let's line up with two tight ends, let's line up and give the ball to Barkley, let's then go spread, let's go empty. They were a lot of empty snaps last year on third down, which was a bit of a struggle at times because of their O-line, but I think he'd like to do a lot of things. Don't forget, you have to remember, you know, when people think about lining up, let's say, with two tight ends, they think, oh, run game. But, you know, a lot of your shot plays in the pass game come out of 1st and 10, two tight ends, max protection, because you're getting a predictable defensive front and a predictable coverage. I think that's one way they're going to try to get explosive plays, because ultimately what you get defensively is you're going to get very often a single high safety coverage, and you get one-on-one on the outside. And that's what you're looking for. So I think Barkley will be a major factor. If Barkley's healthy for 17 games, he'll carry the ball 250 plus times. I think it becomes a function of who they play against, but philosophy-wise, Barkley will be a significant part of what they do. They will not be a pass-heavy team. You know, we know what that percentage is now, and the ratio is in the NFL. No one is 60 or 70% run. It's not like the old days, but they are not going to be 70% pass.
Greg, now with John Ross and Tony, let's talk about Tony here. He was on a trade down. As we know, they took him 20th overall. Based on your tape study at University of Florida, what do you think you could line him up, and how do you think he could be used at this level?
Oh, he can be used in multiple ways, Adam. And he's an ascending player because he is just getting used to playing the receiver position. He was not a receiver in high school. So he's just getting – this past year was his first full-time year as a receiver at Florida. So – and you could see it on tape. He improved as the year went on, just with his understanding of how to run routes. But he's got explosive lateral quickness. He's got that stop and start ability that's rare. And he, like I said, he ran all those slot routes. But they also lined him up in the backfield. They lined him up split. He can run by people. He's a vertical dimension. So he can give you everything you need to be a little creative and figure out, okay, how do we get him out there? I mean, I could easily see a package where they go 3 wide and it's technically 4 wide because Tony's offset in the backfield. You know, it all depends on what you feel guys can handle, because obviously you do that in the defense, they've got to respond to that. And then it's a mental response first before the physical response. So Tony can do a lot of things and line up all over your formation, and it'll be interesting to see how they choose to use him, because Sterling Shepard at his core is really a slot receiver. Now, he's lined up outside because the Giants haven't had enough wide receivers, but at his best, he's a slot receiver.
Is Devontae Booker an upgrade over Wayne Gallman as a backup running back, or is that tit for tat?
Well, I think what they probably like is Booker to play a series or two, and no more than that, and that Barkley can play.
Of course.
So, you know, I think it's half, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You know, Booker's a solid player. Goldman's a solid player, but they hope Barkley is the guy who is the foundation back, which he is based on skill set.
Right.
Yeah, the challenge there is how well he comes back from his ACL reconstruction, and they seem to be a little bit worse than that. So we'll see what he's able to do. Geoff, unless you have anything else on no,
offense, we can go to defense now.
Yeah, let's go to defense. So this Jimenez, Greg, I know some O'Shane Jimenez. There are a lot of guys around the league liked him for that draft in 19. I know he was hurt last season, but we'll see how he does this season. You mentioned earlier Ojulari, this is their 2nd round pick. Odenigbo comes over from Minnesota. Ryan Anderson comes over from Washington. I know these are not great pass rushers, but overall, Greg, what do you think of this pass rush group?
Yeah, but I think they've addressed it. Again, Ojulari, I really liked his tape. It was the injury factor. I think Ojulari is a really refined pass rusher. You mentioned Jimenez. You know, I think he's a good pass rusher. You know, the Odenigbo kid if I'm not mistaken, I think he's Northwestern, and I really liked him coming out. I say, you know, we could easily check that if one of you guys could check that.
Correct.
But I really thought that he had a chance to be, you know, a rotational pass rusher in the NFL. I really liked his tape coming out, and he had moments in Minnesota. They also drafted a kid in the 4th round from Northern Iowa named Ellerson Smith, who's long, he's athletic, obviously played a lower level of college competition, but he's got the traits to be a pass rusher. So they're addressing this. And we'll see how it plays out. But they knew that they needed to get better with individual pass rushers, and we'll see, you know, how it works. But Ojulari is the guy I'd really keep my eye on, because if he's healthy and can play, I think he's got the traits to step right in and give you at least sub package pass rush.
And they're pretty good on the interior line, defensive line, Greg. I mean, obviously Leonard Williams had a breakout year within that scheme, so we'll see if he can take that over. Dexter Lawrence is a kid who's emerging. I think they signed the kid from the Penn State kid who started off with Tennessee, Austin Johnston.
Yep.
So it gives him a little depth on that line. I feel like I'm missing something. Don't they have a Florida State kid?
I mean, they also signed Ryan Anderson, the Alabama kid who was with the Reds, Washington, excuse me.
Right.
And I think he's, you know, a good player. They've got a lot of these guys who are probably not going to play 65, 70 snaps a game, with the exception of maybe a Leonard Williams. But and obviously Blake Martinez does not come off the field. But they have a lot of bodies, and how it shakes out, that remains to be seen. But they've got a lot of bodies and a lot of people who could play in different packages, which, as we know, with Patrick Graham, with the Belichick background, that could well be the case.
Yeah, I forgot they also have Cam Brown, who was a 6th-round pick 2 years ago out of Penn State. He was a kid who probably should have stayed, in my thought, stayed in school. He had great athleticism. I don't know if he had much tape or time other than special teams last year, but I do remember him at Penn State at the linebacker position being pretty disruptive at the time.
Yeah, they also, you know, it's funny. A guy that I happen to watch, he's a free agent, a kid from Georgia Southern named Raymond Johnson, who I watched and thought he had an opportunity to play in the league as well. So they've got bodies.
And Blake Martinez wound up being you know, as we move to the linebacker level, a very big pickup for them from Green Bay as a free agent. I think they were criticized for signing a linebacker to that much money, but he was pretty instrumental to what they did last year. I mean, I think he must have led them in tackles. It felt like he was everywhere. Yeah,
I mean, he's been that player throughout his career. He plays a lot of snaps. I don't think he's a great player, but I think you feel really comfortable with him out there. You know, you put him out there. He's an assignment sound player. You'd love for him to be just a tad bit more explosively athletic, but obviously that's not going to change. And, you know, they're going to play a lot of different fronts. You're going to see them line up with 4-down linemen. You're going to see them line up in a 5-2 front. Some will call it a 3-4, but it's a 5-2. You know, they'll be very multiple with their front looks and their use of players.
You wonder if they'll be – I'm sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on Ellerson Smith, who Greg mentioned, just wanted to mention his or discuss very briefly here his pro day. 6'6" and 210, it's 252. His vertical, guys, 41.5. So it tells you about lower body explosion. His 20 is good. Big hands, long arms, 34, which is really good. That's what you want for a left tackle, 34 longer, guys. Wingspan 8'2" and 7/8. Bench was good at 26. Greg, when you looked at Ellerson Smith, and I know he's got great size, was he gifted? Was he explosive? How did he look on tape? Okay.
He was one of the more intriguing edge prospects I watched. He had an elite combination of length and fluid movement and natural quickness.
Wow.
When he lined up as a wide 9 and he had space to generate burst and use his stride length to quickly attack and challenge offensive tackles. Now, again, he played at Northern Iowa, but he would break down their pass set technique immediately. There were snaps in which he showed impressive timing off the ball. He got off. He gained an immediate advantage by doing that. And if you talk to offensive linemen, they'll tell you if the pass rusher gets off the ball first, you're in a little bit of trouble. Now he showed, even for that body type, he showed some speed to power. You saw that, like when he played against Dylan Radins from North Dakota State, he had some really good snaps against him as well. So I think this guy is a really intriguing guy. And again, because of Northern Iowa, that's why he's a 4th-round pick. But you mentioned some of his measurables. If he played in a Power 5 conference, at his height and weight, with those measurables at him, he would have gone, he would have been a top 60 pick.
Ellerson and Milton Williams will be fun kind of small school rookies to watch in this division.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm talking about the lineman that the Eagles picked in the 3rd round. I want to talk about this secondary. Something stands out about it to me, Greg, from names and numbers here that makes me wonder about what they might do on the back end. First, we're going to pause real quick and remind everybody to go see our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of our Philadelphia professional sports teams. Great podcast as well. Make sure you check out all their content at phlsportsnation.com. You can find them on Twitter at phlsportsnation is the handle. And we'll pause real quick for a word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you do go into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them that Adam Caplan and Geoff Mosher sent you. You will get the best deal you can possibly get out there. All right, Greg, the secondary's got some guys here. I mean, some guys that, they drafted, some guys that are names. And when you talked about how kind of they're okay at the interior linebacker level, you wonder if they're going to be one of those teams now that tries to use more pieces in the secondary for their nickel and dime than, say, linebackers. I mean, they've got guys like Xavier McKinney and Julian Love, and they drafted Aaron Robinson. And I know that you liked Darnay Holmes as a nickel corner. Of course, they signed Adoree Jackson. So it seems like they've assembled a pretty diverse secondary here to maybe use guys in multiple areas and spots.
Yeah, I think they've got a lot of flexibility here, and I think you might see them try to play more man coverage this year. But when you look at the players they have Julian Love, who played meaningful snaps a year ago, and he was a college corner at Notre Dame. They've transitioned him to safety. They have Xavier McKinney, who is probably a safety, but in college at Alabama, he played slot corner as well. So he can do a lot of things. So in Love and McKinney, they have 2 players that have played the corner position. Love outside, McKinney slot. They have Aaron Robinson, who they drafted in the 3rd round, who predominantly played in the slot in college, but also meaningful snaps outside. So he gives you that kind of versatility. And I loved his tape. Loved the way this kid plays. They've got a veteran in Logan Ryan. They've got Jabril Peppers. This is a team with a lot of moving pieces on the back end. Bradbury obviously is a quality corner. I assume Adoree Jackson gets the first opportunity to start opposite him, and we'll see how it plays out. But I would expect to see them play a little bit more man coverage than they did a year ago when they played a high percentage of zone.
Let's talk about Adoree Jackson. He'll definitely be starting. They're paying him $13 million a year.
Yeah.
So he'll be starting. So Greg, he barely played last season with this knee injury. And the Titans decided they didn't want him back, which is not a good sign. But the guy's a former first-round pick. We know he's fast. What have you seen from him on tape over the years?
Yeah, I think he's been a little up and down. I think he's a shorter corner. I think he's an explosive mover. He can run, obviously. I don't think he's quite developed into what you expect as a first-round pick. Not, again, I don't want to start using words like shut down, but I think he's been inconsistent in his ability to play man coverage. And I think in this league, you talk to defensive coaches, and Adam, you know this from things that we've done together, that when defensive coaches talk about corners, they pretty much say if you can't line up and play man coverage, that it just limits what you can do on defense, because you have to be able to play man coverage at some point. And I'll be very curious how it works out if this is sort of a new lease on life, because he certainly has the juice, the suddenness, the twitch to play man coverage. He just hasn't played it, in my view anyway, well enough, which I'm sure is one reason why he's not with Tennessee anymore, because Tennessee needs corners too, by the way.
Yep.
Now, how does Jabril Peppers fit into that? Because I remember the book on him, maybe not the best, man-on-man cover guy, but a versatile piece that you can move around a lot.
Which is kind of what he was in college in Michigan. He played whatever they call that position, where he sort of plays near the line of scrimmage. And I forget what they call it. I knew it.
Star? Is it the star?
I don't know. I don't know if that's what they called it, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I think he's better in that role, Geoff, than he is playing on the back end. I think he's better as kind of a movement guy up around the line of scrimmage and sort of playing to his instincts. I don't see him as a back-end safety personally. The only issue you face there is Logan Ryan's not really a post safety either. So, I don't know how they figure this out. Maybe they'll play a lot more split safety. Quarters coverage has really incrementally increased in its usage in the NFL. Maybe we'll see more of that. I don't know the answer to that because neither Peppers nor Ryan is truly a post safety.
Do you see a lot of quarters coverage or quarter shell with man underneath?
Well, quarters is a match.
That's kind of tough because your corner,
quarters is a matchup concept.
Right.
It's theoretically a zone concept, but it's a matchup concept.
Okay.
It's not like playing cover 2.
Right.
Quarters, cover 4, where you have your four secondary players kind of across the board, each responsible for a quarter of the field. Depending on the offensive formation, it becomes a matchup coverage. Gotcha. So it's, if you're a safety in quarters, you're going to have to match up to receivers at some point. It all depends on how it's taught, whether when you match up to them. There's a lot of gray areas, and offenses are very good at attacking those gray areas, but quarters is essentially a matchup coverage.
So, Greg, if you're the Giants and you're going up against Dallas, because we'll certainly talk about this when we get to the Eagles in our final segment. At least I think for Giants, they've got Bradbury, you mentioned, Dory Jackson, Aaron Robinson, I want you to discuss for us. Darnay Holmes, I know is a guy you like. You've talked about that.
Yep.
Yiadom had to play last year, and they drafted Rodarius Williams in the 6th. We'll see if he makes the team. So, to me, Greg, if you're playing a team that spreads you out, do you think the Giants can handle that?
Well, then it comes down to who's going to play the slot. The slot. Darnay Holmes, I assume, would get the first opportunity. I thought he improved as the year went on, but they did draft Aaron Robinson in the 3rd round. Some could well see Robinson, as I said, as an outside corner. But he played a lot of played a lot of nickel slot for Central Florida a year ago. He's a super competitive kid. He embraced the contact nature of the game, which is why the slot kind of fits him better. So I don't know if they see him as that guy competing with Darnay Holmes, who, like I said, I thought the tape was pretty good for a rookie corner. And, Darnay Holmes, when he came out of high school, he was the #1 recruited corner in America coming out of high school in Florida, in I believe the Los Angeles area. So, and he actually matched up, not his last year in college, but he matched up to Hollywood Brown when they played Oklahoma, and he actually did a really good job. So, so Holmes I thought he played well. So it's a good situation to have. They'll figure it out. That's what training camp is for. But they'll be able to match up to 11 personnel packages.
Good.
If they want to play man.
All right, so let's close the book here on the Giants. We've done Washington and agreed that they have a potentially elite defense. We've talked about Dallas and what they have on offense. The Giants are a little bit. They don't have a prolific offense. They don't have a Washington-style defense, but they almost seem a little bit more balanced as far as the gap between their offense and defense is great.
I would agree.
So they're an intriguing team. Do you feel like they're a team that's got to be considered competitive to win this division?
Yes. Look, it's easy to rip the Giants, and we know a lot of people have decided that Daniel Jones can't play. The tape doesn't show you that, by the way. That doesn't mean he's great, but the tape shows you that he still has a chance to be a quality NFL quarterback. I think that their season could go any number of ways, but I would not be surprised if all this came together, if their O-line continued to improve with young players, with Galladay, with Tony, with Barkley ideally playing 17 games. This is an offense that could be consistent. I don't want to sit here and say they're going to put up 30. I don't know. That'd be stupid. But I think they could have a consistent offense, and I think their defense, which was pretty good last year, it's only going to get better with the second year of Patrick Graham and better players.
Right. And did you see the job that they did at Seattle? Well, that was incredible. Incredible.
Yeah. So. I think the Giants have a chance to be a very solid football team. Maybe not spectacular, but very solid. And this is a division, as we know, where every other team has clearly defined issues. You talk about Dallas, their defense. You talk about Washington. I mean, they've got a great defense. I don't want to say their offense is a problem. I don't view it as a problem, but I think it's a question. The Eagles, there's too many questions to really speak about the Eagles.
That's right. But we'll do that anyway in our final, in our wrap-up of the NFC East. We'll get into the Eagles last and be, even more expansive on them. So we thank Greg for joining us to break down the New York Giants. That's 3 in the book. Again, the Eagles are last. They will be our next and final NFC East preview episode. So that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks to our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on YouTube. It's called Sports Talk with Broads. Find him on Twitter at Broads81 and go to his website, broadsmedia.com. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.